Hi and welcome to my music room tour. This has been a video I've been meaning to record for absolutely ages, and I just thought there's no better time than the present. So yeah, welcome to my music room. A little bit of a backstory about me. I started in music education back just over 10 years ago now, back in 2014 as a secondary school classroom music teacher. And then I moved into private instrumental tuition when I had my son in 2016. So I have been self-employed now for 8 years. During that time, I've learned a lot. My situation has changed a lot. This room has evolved a lot. So I feel like when I started my business, my self-employment business, I would have found a video like this incredibly useful. One, because I'm just nosy as a person, but number two, because I think if you can see someone who's done it a long time, what's their setup, what works really well for them, what perhaps doesn't work so well for them. I think that's really useful. You don't have to be, I teach piano and flute, you don't have to teach those instruments necessarily, but I feel like for any instrumental teacher who's starting off that wants to set up their own business, they want to see another teacher's sort of teaching room, this is going to be such a useful video for you. Or anyone that's just been doing it for a little while and fancies, being nosy, like myself. Yeah, I hope you enjoy this video. So this teaching room really is a byproduct of COVID. When we first moved into the property, I actually used to teach from the box room upstairs. At that point, that was the only available space that we had for me to work from home. However, I will say that it never really felt that professional because I didn't really like taking students upstairs. I was always really conscious of having the bathroom door shut or the bedroom door shut. So, but at that point in time, that was the only available space. So that was what was working for us then. Obviously, we all got put into lockdown, and when they lifted the restrictions, they still kept a 2-metre rule in place, which meant that I wasn't actually physically able to teach from that room anymore because it was so small. So we had to make the huge sacrifice to turn what is essentially was our living room, the room that I'm currently in, into a music room. And it wasn't for a further 18 months to 2 years that we actually had an extension built on the side of the home, which is now our sort of living room space. But again, if you're self-employed, you'll know that sometimes you do have to make these sacrifices, and we have got a setup now which works really well for us. So I'm glad that we did make that decision. Initially, when we'd had the extension built, I had originally planned to actually teach from the extension. However, there was 3 main reasons why I feel like this room works so much better as a music room, and I'll go through them now. So the reason number 1 is having an easily accessible toilet. If you are looking to go self-employed as an instrumental tutor, whether you're working from home or perhaps renting somewhere else, having a toilet nearby is incredibly useful, not just for you, but the amount of students, both, children and adults who need to go for a wee. It's just really helpful to have that there. Reason number 2 is that the front door is not too far away from the teaching room itself. So that means that I haven't got to worry about if there's any mess upstairs or if there's dirty dishes in the kitchen. I haven't got to traipse people through any areas I don't want them to see. And reason number 3 is that because this room is on the front of the property, I am easily able to see who's coming up the road for their lesson, who's perhaps which parents are waiting for their children to pick them up. I have a completely full timetable now, which means I have to run back-to-back lessons. So having easy transitions, because I can see who's there, who's waiting, makes things so much smoother. So as you enter the music room, the first thing on your left is the desktop computer. Over the years, I realised that having a proper desktop computer is really, really handy. If I'm doing admin tasks such as emailing parents, booking exams, sending out invoices, it's so much quicker to actually have a computer that has a proper keyboard and a proper mouse. Also, I use this computer for arranging composing on MuseScore, and also for students when they are doing their music theory exams. Now, over in this corner is my bookcase. I deliberately kept the top 2 shelves completely free because I've accumulated quite a few gifts from students that I really wanted to sort of display. Here is my favourite music quote ever, which is "Where words fail, music speaks." I believe that's Hans Christian Andersen who said that, but I might need to double check that. So yeah, I've got like lovely gifts from students. Then next up here, this is sort of my filing system. So I've got pre-grades 1 and grade 1 and 2 in one box. grades 3 and 4, grades 5 and 6 repertoire, 7, 8 and then diploma, and I've got some flute bits and bobs there as well. I will say that within the actual box files themselves there is no system, but repertoire that's in that general area is just in that particular box, so at least I can grab things out if I need it. Next up, that little bit lower down, I've got less used items such as past theory papers, music theory books, teacher training books, technical works such as Hannen, Czerny, Bergmüller, sight reading books, and some trumpet repertoire there as well. And then at the very bottom are my least used books such as GCSE A-level books, oral books, a box of miscellaneous items which I'm pretty sure that all music teachers have, such as the odd recorder, the half-broken xylophone, bits and bobs like that. This is the focal point, and I wanted to make sure that I had the electric guitar and the acoustic guitar either side of the fireplace. On the actual mantelpiece itself, we've got a very old tarnished cornet, which there is a little bit of a backstory to this. I used to work at a middle school, and just before we got put into lockdown, I rescued this. It had been left at the back of the practice room completely, it wasn't in its box, it was completely battered, completely tarnished. As you can see, it very much still is. Lots of students actually ask me, am I going to get it reconditioned? But I think it's actually really charming the way it is. It looks like there's a story to it. So yeah, I adopted this just before COVID. Then moving into this corner, this is my sort of office stationery setup, if you will. It's got my Brother printer on top. This printer is absolutely brilliant because it's really economical on the ink. And as an instrumental teacher, music teacher, you are going to find that you end up needing to print a lot of music. You can't have coloured ink in it, but that's okay because most of the things you'll need to print are of course in black and white anyway. Obviously in the drawers, I've got literally just stationery bits. Nothing too exciting. Lots of Polly Pockets, envelopes for if I've got students who have done lots of exams at the same time and I need to separate the certificates, I've got some nice envelopes to put those certificates into so they don't get sort of all battered in their bags. Underneath in here I've literally just got paper, printer ink, bits and bobs like that, nothing too exciting. So moving over to my teaching corner now. First of all, I would actually like to talk about my side table. This was something that I didn't initially have when I started teaching, and then over the years I realised how important it would be to have one. Essentially, this is where I keep my most commonly used items, such as I've got a whiteboard up here in this bag here. I did consider mounting a whiteboard actually on the wall, but you know, as much as that would be helpful, this is also my home and I didn't want it to look too much like a classroom, so it's still handy to have it to hand but not stuck on the wall. Next up, I've got a box of my most commonly used books. I teach from the Piano Adventures series quite a bit. I sort of dip in and out of it using my favourite pieces by them, and I really love their sight reading books in particular. The way I will do a video on this at some point in more depth, but so I've got all of those to hand, so if a student comes without the books and with the materials that they need, it doesn't matter, I've always got something ready to go. Next up is a tiny little clock. This might seem obvious, having a clock in the room. I used to have quite a big clock over there, and I would find that students would literally mid-lesson just turn around on their seat and just look at the clock, and I think, you know, are you bored? Are you okay? So over the years I realised, no, I'm just going to take that clock off the wall and keep a tiny little clock just round the corner of the piano so that I can easily see it as well, so I can kind of make sure that we're on track for their lesson, but that they're not necessarily being distracted by the time. Then I've got a pot of coloured pens. I use coloured pens a lot for things like annotating scale sheets or annotating dynamics or tempo changes in pieces. It's amazing the impact I think having colour on a page can have, so I've got lots of gel pens for that. Hand sanitizer because obviously COVID, and also actually the alcohol content is fantastic for cleaning the whiteboard. This, I'm not sure if you really need to see this, but I will show you this anyway because I know I'm nosy and I'd want to know what it is. Now, anyone who knows me will know that I have a slight obsession with UFOs. And one of my students, just before he was leaving, decided to buy me some little aliens. However, it's a real shame, but one of their legs had broken off and I don't actually have the heart to tell him that's happened. So I sort of keep them in the box, but so yeah, that's what that is. Not an essential for if you're starting your business, but you know, these things, you will end up accumulating these things. Inside the actual drawer itself, I think as an instrumental teacher, there's like fundamental things you will need. One, whiteboard pens, lots of them that are ready to go. Super sharp pencils that are already sharpened and ready as well. I've got a sharpener that actually holds the actual bits in, so I don't have to do it into the bin. And then lots of pegs to actually peg the music, so that if I've got the window open and it's a windy day, if the music starts to flop, I can kind of peg it to a book that's behind. I've got post-it notes in here as well for if a student hasn't got their practice diary. That's no problem. I can just write out what they need to do and stick it to one of their books. Hand sanitizer because, well, you know. And then obviously tissues as well. They're always really useful to have. So that's what's in my desk. And then underneath, the final thing I need to talk about is the bin. Having a bin to hand. It's more my students that use this than me, because often they'll come into a lesson with a can of Coke, or they'll need to blow their nose mid-lesson, we need somewhere to put their tissue. So having a bin to hand is useful. And then, yeah, finally down here is an extra long charging lead for my iPad and my phone. So if I'm recording an exam and I need some charge, it's ready to go, and I can just kind of like, because it's super long, I haven't got to worry about plugging that in somewhere else. So moving into the main event, this is my teaching piano. I teach from the digital Yamaha CLP 685. I bought this around 3 years ago and it was top of the range when I bought it. I know lots of teachers choose to teach from acoustic pianos, but for me, digital, I don't feel like I'm lacking anything by teaching from a digital piano. In fact, if anything, I feel like I'm gaining many things. So first of all, what I love about this piano is the fact that it has the touch sensitive weighted keys with the synthetic ebony and ivory key tops. It has the escape mechanism. It also has the 3 pedals. So you've got your damper pedal, your effects pedal and your sostenuto pedal. It has many functions such as Bluetooth, so if I am recording an exam and I need to get a backing track up, I can easily Bluetooth that through the piano. The actual sound itself is sampled from the Yamaha CFX Grand, which just sounds absolutely phenomenal. We've got an inbuilt metronome there as well. Obviously we can control the volume at the top. It's not easy to turn the piano on and off, and I know that sounds like a silly thing, but you can't accidentally hit the off button and it just goes off or anything like that. And I guess the most important thing, the most obvious thing, is I don't have the maintenance costs that you'd actually have if you had an acoustic piano. I don't have to have it tuned twice a year or anything like that. It works well in this particular space. So yeah, I really have loved having this piano. This is Ziggy. I must talk about Ziggy. He was actually made by one of my students who went off to university, and he actually made this himself in the summer holiday and gave it to me. And he just sits on the piano. Having something like this is actually quite useful, because if you're teaching little ones, even like in a first lesson, if you're discussing, you know, how the black notes are situated, and you want to talk about, oh, okay, set of 3, set of 2, just getting them to, okay, put Ziggy on all the sets of 3, or put Ziggy on all the sets of 2. Having like a friendly little creature is always like, no one hates him. So yeah, we've got Ziggy there. I've got my iPad. Use this a lot. This is, I think, 2nd gen. It's quite old now, 12.9-inch screen. I love this because often these days, obviously, if you download music, you can just get the music straight up. It's the same size as an A4 piece of paper, so I actually kind of draw on this more than I would even go into the bookcase at this point. On here as well, I've got apps that I use as well, such as NoteRush. That's a fantastic app for improving sight reading. On top of the piano, I've got my actual metronome, because obviously I use the inbuilt one on the piano a lot, but I think it's really lovely to have an old-fashioned metronome. And then finally, above the metronome, I've got 3 posters on the wall which I use the most. So first of all, we've got musical facts. So this is something that I talk about a lot, obviously, especially in beginner lessons. So you've got that there. In the middle, we've got the circle of fifths. I use that obviously a lot, especially as students kind of like, you know, approach grade 5 music theory, so it's always there. And then we've got the note values over here. Annoyingly, I couldn't find any with the English terminology on. It is the American terminology. However, when teaching time signatures and explaining the bottom number, I actually feel like the Americans have, the way the American system works with calling them whole notes, half notes, quarter notes, I think that actually makes more sense. So I've deliberately not annotated, I haven't put the English on there, I've just kept it as it is. And then finally, just to talk a little bit about the decor choices I've decided to make in this room. First of all, this room, although it's a classroom, it is still a room in my home, and I wanted it to reflect my personal style. So I've kept everything quite neutral, quite calm. Obviously, I have got the feature wall with the wallpaper on. This wallpaper was from B&Q. I decided to put the fairy lights around the mantelpiece just because I think it makes it look quite magical. And I know that I would love to come to a music room like this if I was having lessons myself. All of the furniture is mango wood, so it matches, and it's all from Oak Furnitureland. I actually got it from the clearance store. Oak Furnitureland clearance is the place to go. The prices are, insane for what you're getting for the quality. The rug, I really wanted that sort of studio rug. Now, I do appreciate that I don't have a drum kit in here, but I still wanted that sort of boho studio vibe. So the rug I got from Dunelm. And obviously the carpet is just again a muted sort of greyish colour carpet. Initially, when I first started teaching from this room, I actually used to ask students to take their shoes off at the door and then come in. But I realised over time that, especially if they're little ones, they take so long to do their shoelaces back up. If they're needing to use the pedals, some students find it actually quite painful to use the sustain pedal without having shoes on. So over time I've just had to learn to relax and be like, do you know what? It is still a teaching room, so they can keep their shoes on. So that basically concludes my music room tour. I hope that you've enjoyed this video. If you've got any questions, please comment below. If this has been helpful for you, please like and subscribe. I will be doing more in-depth videos on some of the things I've spoken about, such as the teaching methods I work to, perhaps the exams that I run to, things like that. So please watch out for those videos that will be coming soon. And yeah, I will see you next time. Bye.